Well, my experience of the thing is the other way around. My experience is that politicians tend to speak in the local language, and we've seen the valiant and really remarkably successful efforts that Sonia Gandhi has made, for instance, to learn Hindi, which is thoroughly commendable. So they do. But I would also like to comment on one point, again. This business of people not being able to speak English, or very often not being able to speak their mother tongue properly as well, and needing a policy. I think, and my friend who publishes the Tamil Dictionary has what I think is a very good policy suggestion, which is that up to the class 6 standard, that all children should be educated in their mother tongue, but should also be taught English. The problem, I think, is arising very often with these English language medium schools, which are attractive because they're English medium, but there's a shortage of teachers who can teach in them. So you end up, as I say, with a paradigm of a child who neither knows his or her mother tongue nor his or her English properly.
I want to come back to the kind of English they use, whether in their daily lives or whether in schools or colleges or offices. It's the kind of English, it's the complete change in the vocabulary, in the syntax of English, that the varieties of English that you find not just in India, in various parts of India, but even outside India. So the Oxford Dictionary of Singlish for Singaporean English. So I would like to come back to that. So how much of that is acceptable? Ira.
I'm not sure I followed the whole drift of what you were asking, but if you're talking about how much of the Hinglish is acceptable to...
No, and how much of it being turned into, an amalgamation of an Indian language, everything. So use of Hindi words into English and making it...
I think one of the things that all of us admire in the work of, let's say, somebody like Prasoon, who has this facility to use both languages very creatively, is the element of fun. As long as it's a healthy play with words, I think it is acceptable. Wherever you are using one to score a point, or where you're trying to show the other language down, I think that is something which one should try and avoid. But otherwise, mimicking, making fun, this is all part of a language growing. And I think it enriches both languages. I remember we used to all laugh about General Cariappa's speech when, poor man, he was the last Brown Sahib in the Indian Army, and apparently when India was made independent, he was the army chief, and he gave a speech and said, "Ab hum sab muft hai, ye mulk muft hai, tum muft hai." So, as long as you can laugh at it, but not at him, that would be, I think, a good marker.
Really, the version of that story I heard ended when the army finally gave up, was when he said, "Aapke biwiyon bhi muft hai."
When you're talking about this hybrid language, there are two kinds of language actually I've noticed are there. One is the people, so it's a language of survival. When my driver tells me, seat comfortable hai, then he's to learn that language because he feels that this is how I can communicate with this part of the world. There's another way of using this language is, I record my pajama there. Now this is a very, very condescending way. It's not, they're not condescending, but there is some, this is English speaking, taking, using Hindi and feeling a right over doing it the way he or she wants. Versus this guy who has used a word comfortable to survive. There are two different scenarios here. So we should know there are two kinds of language which are going to exist.
And what happens to the call center training English, where you've got to train people in the correct use of English so that the person on the other side
understands? That is a split personality.
But you know, I challenge this word correct because, you know, when I first joined the BBC, if you didn't speak Pukka, like I suppose I speak because of my education and everything, you wouldn't be allowed on the air. Now, if you speak like I do, you're considered to be a boring old something or other. And if you don't have what you'd call an estuary accent or a strong regional accent, they don't want to know you. So you see, what is this word correct? The correct keeps on changing, I think.
Thank you. I think I'd like to open this up to the House now for questions. I can see a hand go up there, so that's the first hand. So, do you need a microphone?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I can hear you. Something like that. You're right. I agree.
Is there a mic? Can someone give it to Javed sir, please?
Moini, where is this mic?
Hello. A lot of work has been done by David Crystal. Can I go ahead with this? A lot of work has been done by David Crystal and David Gledall on the global English. And recently in 2008, when David Crystal came to India, in Times of India he said that Indian English is going to be the international English in future because of IT revolution. So my question is, what is your comment on this, whether Indian English is going to take over what we call British English or American English or Australian English, whatever, you know, other kinds of Englishes are there. And related to this question is, Guru Charan Das, in one of the British Council seminars, made a very important point, and I agree with him, that the spelling of English should be changed to Inglish instead of English.
Thank you. So who wants to answer that?
Do you want that to happen? Are you aiming for it? We are all with you.
Anyone else?
There was a there's a person. There's a question there. All right. You carry on, and then you.
I completely agree with Mr. Prasoon. Mr. Prasoon, like he said, we can connect really well, and we can put across our message to the masses if we use Hinglish. But today, when I was attending the session by Gulzar's, they said language is a window to your culture. So, do you think it will affect the existence of our culture, use of English?
See, I think I've rightly understood your question is that does language affect culture, or if by English our culture is getting invaded? You know, is it what you're trying to say? I think, you know, it's an organic process. A new culture. We are living in a global world. A lot of cultures will come and interact with each other. I do not think one culture destroyed another. There's a third culture which comes into existence, and that always have happened. In India, we have seen so many cultures coming and living here. Before that, so many other languages have come here. Has it destroyed the culture of this country? No. It has, in fact, enriched it. That's the reason an Indian finds it so easy to operate in this world today, because we have been used to seeing so many other cultures, and we've been coexisting with them. So I'm not at all worried that English or any other language can destroy in the Indian culture. We know how to protect our core, and we know how to mold ourselves and give birth to fresher and nicer and third cultures.
I would just add one thing to that, and I absolutely agree that after all, the whole history of Indian culture is one of adaptation rather than one of adoption or being adopted. But I would just go back to this fundamental point that keys to your culture also lie in your languages, and that therefore it is very important to treasure your own languages as well as to learn English and to rejoice in the fact that English is becoming an Indian language.